Hello, welcome to the Title IX training session on gender equity and sexual assault. Through this presentation, you will learn what your protections under Title IX are as a student. We'll discuss the elements of consent. We'll talk about how to report a Title IX incident and on and off-campus resources that are available to you. So let's start at the beginning. The number one question I receive as the Title IX coordinator is, what is Title IX? Title IX is a federal law that was incorporated in the 1972 Educational Amendments. It states, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. This means that every college in the United States, whether it's a small private college like Springfield College or a large state university, so long as it receives federal funds, it's obligated under Title IX. Title IX prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex or gender. It applies to what we call gender-based misconduct. So what is gender-based misconduct? It's misconduct that's directed at a person on the basis of biological sex, gender identity, a perceived lack of adherence to socially defined norms when it comes to femininity or masculinity, or a person's sexual orientation. And while we talk a lot about biological sex or gender, gender-based misconduct can apply to all areas of collegiate life. When we talk about Title IX, a lot of people think about equity or access on a campus, and all that comes to mind is athletics. There's also a lot more to Title IX than just athletics. It includes cases or instances of sexual violence or sexual assault, discrimination against a student in grading, opportunities, access to classes or academic programs, or access to medical services. It applies to applicants for employment as well as admissions. Title IX isn't just about students. Title IX also applies, affects, and protects faculty and staff of the college as well. Title IX covers sexual harassment in academic or co-curricular settings, discrimination in pay or discipline, failure to provide equitable opportunities for participation in college athletics, as well as financial aid. Gender-based misconduct can include lots of different things: sexual harassment, sexual violence, dating and domestic violence, sexual exploitation, stalking, intimidation, retaliation, or the aiding or facilitating of any of the above. These can be present, again, in all areas of collegiate life. And it's our job to ensure that this type of misconduct is stopped and addressed. We have some institutional responsibilities under Title IX. First, when the college knows or reasonably should know of a possible instance of sexual violence or gender-based misconduct, it must take immediate and appropriate steps to investigate or otherwise determine what occurred. If an investigation reveals that gender-based misconduct did in fact take place, creating a hostile environment, the college must take reasonably calculated steps to end the discrimination or misconduct and eliminate the hostile environment. When we say hostile environment, what we mean is an environment that prevents students from fully engaging in their own learning. Title IX is about the removal of barriers. Sexual harassment, sexual assault, discrimination is a barrier to education. When we eliminate sexual harassment or discrimination, a student can fully participate in their education. We have a responsibility to stop any misconduct that we know about, prevent that type of misconduct from reoccurring, and remedy any effects of that misconduct. We're required to ensure a prompt and equitable process. We're required that our process is fair to all students involved, both the respondent and the complainant. We have an obligation to use the preponderance of the evidence standard. This standard legally is more likely than not, which is different than that used in a criminal setting. In criminal courts, the standard of beyond a reasonable doubt is used. Title IX processes are not criminal processes and therefore do not adhere to the same standard. We also have an institutional obligation to protect students against retaliation. That means if a student files a Title IX complaint and then experiences greater misconduct in retaliation of that complaint, that retaliation in and of itself becomes a part of the Title IX case and is handled by our Student Code of Conduct. Institutions are also required to have a Title IX coordinator and a Title IX team. Here at Springfield College, we have a Title IX coordinator. In addition, we have several deputy coordinators who serve and support the entire community through Title IX procedures. When we're talking about consent, it's important to know what it is and what it is not. Consent is active, knowing, voluntary, informed, revocable at any time, and limited. Consent is limited to a single act, and it's also limited to a single instance. For example, if two persons are in a romantic relationship, they do not have indefinite consent. Consent is limited. Consent is not a lack of resistance, something assumed, it cannot be forced, and it is not available when a party is incapacitated. Consent is permission for something to happen or an agreement to do something. When we talk about consent in a Title IX context, we're talking about consent as it relates to sexual interactions and romantic relationships. When a party is incapacitated, either from drugs or alcohol, they cannot process or understand the outcome of a decision. So even when a person says yes, if they're incapacitated, consent does not exist. When you think about consent, think about FRIES. F-R-I-E-S. Freely given, reversible at any time, informed, enthusiastic, and sober.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they go, "Oh my God, I would love a cup of tea. Thank you." Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, "Hey, would you like a cup of tea?" And they're like, I'm not really sure. Then you could make them a cup of tea or not, but be aware they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important part, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you are entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say no thank you, then don't make them tea. At all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea. Don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, "Yes, please. That's kind of you." And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time that it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind. And you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they're unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea. And they can't answer the question, "Do you want tea?" because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea. And they said yes. But in the time it took you to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down. Make sure the unconscious person is safe. And this is the important part again. Don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they'd finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they're safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it going, "But you wanted tea last week." or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, "But you wanted tea last night." If you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you're able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand it when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea.
If something happens, it's important to know that there are both confidential resources and non-confidential resources available to you or friends. Confidential resources are identified in the gender-based misconduct policy. Confidential resources are folks on and off campus that you can report a Title IX incident to who will not trigger any Title IX investigation. If you tell a confidential resource of an incident that occurred relative to Title IX, it stays between you and that person. Non-confidential resources are also available to you. Non-confidential resources require a report be completed with Springfield College. Non-confidential resources are also available to you. If you file a report or make a disclosure of a Title IX incident to a non-confidential resource, they're required to file a formal report with the Office of Title IX. It's important to know that while an individual who is a non-confidential resource is required to file a report with Title IX, it does not automatically mean that a formal investigation will be the outcome. For the resource guide for your campus, visit the Title IX website at springfield.edu/Title9/get-help. You can also find the Title IX landing page by going to springfield.edu, scrolling to the bottom, and clicking Title IX on the landing page. Clicking the Get Help button will lead you to a list of resources specific to your campus. You should also be aware of 2 national resources that are readily available: the RAINN National Sexual Assault Hotline and the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Their numbers are listed here. Comes to their knowledge. Like we discussed at the beginning of this presentation, we have an institutional responsibility to respond when we know or reasonably should know of instances of gender-based misconduct. So what are your takeaways? Let's talk about your student to-do list. These are things that make you a great member of our Springfield College community. They help keep you safe and they help keep your friends safe. First, understand consent. Think about consent in the context of your own relationships. Tell your friends about it. Expect consent and respect consent. Learn where Title IX lives. Explore the Title IX website and review the resource sheet for your campus. Review your reporting options. Review the gender-based misconduct policy that governs all Title IX processes at Springfield College and the resources that are available to you online. Know your resources. Know who you can and cannot go to if you need help, or who you can refer a friend to. Resources are listed online. And finally, learn your responsible employees. Understand your points of contact at your campus and know who your deputy coordinator is. Understand who is and who is not considered a responsible employee for reporting purposes, so that if something should happen, the outcome you desire can take place.